Tyreek Hill got the bag again from the Dolphins, a restructured 3-year deal worth $90 million. We're exploring that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day and sometimes twice a day here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The playoffs have wound down. The sports have stopped sporting. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, as I teased on the practice recap for today, which is Saturday, August 3rd, I just sat down, got back to the hotel, started my way through the notes and pulling the Mike McDaniel quote from the press conference and uploading the Tua Tagovailoa clip from his post-practice availability. And boom, Tyreek Hill restructured contract drops. 3 years, $90 million with $65 million guaranteed, according to all the bigwigs, Adam Schefter and Marcel Louis-Jacques, Ian Rappaport, who's who, right? Of all the insiders at all the major media outlets, all kind of at the same time. But Tyreek gave us some context clues because Tyreek started tweeting very excitedly for practice, after practice, I should say. And lo and behold, this contract gets sorted out. This saga had kind of been on the back burner while the Dolphins finalized the Tua Tagovailoa deal. But I think the first thing that we should do in reacting to the news, because there's still elements of unknown, I think that's very important to outline, and we'll get into that. But what was Tyreek Hill's prior accommodations with his contract? That is very important to outline as far as what is changing at this point in time. So Tyreek Hill, his first 2 seasons in Miami, in cash, he received $26.885 million in 2022, and then he received $26.35 million in 2023. He was scheduled this season for under $20 million in cash, $19.765, and then in 2025, he was scheduled for $22.935 million before the fluff year at the end. 2026 was due $45 million in cash. Right? And then there were roster bonuses that were a part of that puzzle and workout bonuses in 2025 and 2026. So this was the dip year for Tyreek, the third year of his 5-year contract. Technically, there was a pre-existing year, so it was a 4-year extension worth $120 million. And obviously Miami traded for him in the final year of his pre-existing contract. So that was kind of the cash flow. Tyreek had received about $53.1 million through his first 2 seasons, was due for 19. And that was the last of his guaranteed money. And that's really the biggest piece of the puzzle here, is Tyreek entering into this year had this year's salary left in guaranteed money on his contract, and that was it. And everybody kind of understood when this contract was signed that putting Tyreek Hill on the books for $45 million in cash received in 2026 wasn't going to happen. He's scheduled for a $56 million salary cap hit, $56.3 million salary cap hit with $45 million in non-guaranteed cash. He was either going to get his contract redone before then, or he was going to be cut and not paid that money, because that for the team, you could save 45 out of $56 million and take an $11 million cap hit and move on as a team. And that was even a lower number as far as what the dead cap would have been prior to when the team max restructured his contract in 2023 to create as much salary cap space as they could. So that guaranteed port money is the biggest dramatic shift and change with the Tyreek Hill contract. And when it came out, and I believe Pro Football Talk, and I'm glad they hit on something for, I was very complimentary of Mike earlier this offseason as far as insight into the business league thing. And all he has done since has made it really hard to defend Mike Florio as it pertains to the Miami Dolphins. But he was the first to report that the team, or that Tyreek Hill was looking for a contract adjustment. And when that came out, the immediate knee-jerk reaction that I had was, I hope they don't do an extension because this is a player who has 3 years remaining on his current contract. And to do an extension with 3 years in the NFL is a long time. Like, there's a lot of players that get into the league and they hope they make it 3 years so that they can collect tenure and be on the healthcare program. Right. And maybe 3 years isn't a long time for Tyreek Hill, who's been at this and performing at an extremely high level for a very long time. But nevertheless, that can be an eternity in an NFL lifetime, or it can go very quickly, depending on how good you are. But 3 years, a lot can change. The Buffalo Bills did a contract extension with Stephon Diggs with several years remaining on his contract, and things got so bad so quickly that Stephon Diggs didn't even play. This year would have been the first year of his new contract, and they had to trade him. So with 3 years remaining, hearing that Tyreek wanted a contract adjustment, that was my first and initial knee-jerk reaction. I hope they don't add new years to the back end of the deal. They didn't. Now, there's a lot of questions about how they structured the cash, what it's going to look like as far as a salary cap ramification. We'll get into some of that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. So make sure you stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience are not just the formula for winning championships. It's what's keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. So the first thing, now that we're shifting focus from what was the Tyreek Hill contract to what is the Tyreek Hill contract, Tyreek had about another $40 million in guaranteed cash. And I'm not a math guy. I'll let the cat out of the bag. For those of you who are everydayers and have listened for a long enough amount of time, you probably already figured this out. I am kind of a math guy. I like this kind of math. I don't like trigonometry or algebra, but the accounting of NFL salaries and the salary cap, it's kind of my vibe. It matches my freak, I guess. So I am indeed a math guy with this kind of stuff. So as I look at $65 million in cash, and you were scheduled to have 19 and change, you can tell based off of the current APY of top wide receivers, this is probably this year and next year's salary fully guaranteed at 65, which would be an average of $32.5 million per season. So if he gets 32.5 over the next 2 years, and that's the $65 million in guaranteed cash, it's worth bearing in mind he was owed 19.765 and 22.935. So it's about a 50% redistribution. That's about another $20 million moved up. And that's where it ties back to the final thought that I had before the end of the first segment. I hope they don't add New Year's to the back of the deal. They did not. There's no New Year's on this. This is simply a cash redistribution. So the $45 million dummy year at the back end of the deal is no longer a dummy year. Well, it's still a dummy year, but it's not a fluff number of dummy cash to increase the average value of the contract. This looks like it's about $12 million raise this year and about a $10 million, $9 million raise next year. So, I mean, you're talking $20 million out of the 45 on the last year of the deal that's been pushed up into the next 2 years. And then you can probably get to that contract year and make a decision. Tyreek, are you going to continue to play? We're interested in retaining your services. We're not interested in retaining your services. That part of it is going to be very black and white. You're going to get through 2024 and 2025. This is a firm 2-year commitment is my general assumption based on $65 million in cash, knowing what the top of the wide receiver market looks like. And to Tyreek Hill's credit, if indeed, the $65 million is the total sum of cash that is owed to him over the next 2 seasons, he was a man of his word. Because he said in the build up to this, I don't have to be, or I don't need to be the highest paid wide receiver. I want to be fair to the team while also in a compensation window that puts me amongst my peers. And if he didn't put the Dolphins through the ringer to get him $70.1 million over the next 2 years, which would be 35.05 or 35.05, which would then in turn put him back as the top APY over the next 2 years. Then I think this was a compromise of not New Year's, redistribution of cash, not top APY average in guaranteed cash over the next few years. But we don't know this. This is simply me saying this in looking at the guaranteed money because the full terms of the contract have not been made available yet. And that's kind of why I waited a little bit when the news first broke. I said, let me see if we get a quick turnaround of what the cash looks like before I react to this. Because there's a lot of moving parts here. And the thing that we really haven't gotten into, and that's the long-term outlook as far as this contract and this decision for the team, is how they have structured the money or what they can do with how they are paying him the money versus what his salary cap hit was versus what is it going to be? And is there a benefit to creating a bunch of cap space versus keeping some of his cap numbers close to and parallel to what they would be otherwise? That's kind of the most fascinating part of this for Miami. Obviously, they gave him a fair market deal in cash. And there may be incentive money that's stacked over top of this over the next 2 years too. We don't know because we don't have the full terms of the contract. Those are some of the questions that I have, and we're going to find out as soon as it is published, the full terms, which I can't imagine will take too long. Probably if he signs it, if he formally signs, if they agree to terms today and he signs it tomorrow, I would imagine we'll probably get that one tomorrow. That's a big enough fish that the contract sites usually get a hold of them pretty quick for the big fish like that. But what can they do with the cash that he's owed now? That's new cash that he's owed versus he was scheduled for salary cap hits over the next 2 years of $31.3 and $34.2 million. What if that was money that had already been paid out? What if that, there's, again, it's probably about a $10 million, $9 million raise in 2025, and it's about a $12 million raise in 2024. That's $21 million across cap hits that's already scheduled to be 31.2 and 31.3 and $34.2 million. How are they working that? We're going to get into that next as far as their options here on Locked On Dolphins. We all love sports, and when the sport stops sporting in the dead heat of the summer, it can be a little challenging. The playoffs have wound down for basketball and hockey, and we're in the heat of baseball season, and football season's not all the way back yet. But FanDuel keeps the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets. Anytime you're in the mood this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. This is where I'm in a little bit of a conflict with Tyreek's new cash. He was due $19 million in cash. And the other portion of his salary cap hit, there was $11.3 million that was money from his original signing bonus and his contract restructure in 2023. So the prorated amount of prior signing bonus or bonus checks that they have written him is $11.3 million this year, next year, and in 2026. What I would imagine is kind of the first thing that's happened is there is some percentage of his salary, and that's the 19.6 plus whatever new cash has been put into this year. Some portion of that, I would assume, has been put into some kind of bonus structure, either considered a new deal with a signing bonus or as a different kind of option bonus that the team can prorate out across as many as 5 seasons. But again, he's only under contract for 3. So how would that work, Kyle? The infusion of the existence of void years does not currently exist on the contract that Tyreek Hill previously had. There was no dead money automatically folded into 2027 or potentially beyond. Well, void years, if you're not familiar with them, they serve as dummy years on the back end of a contract where you can tuck portions of a signing bonus or an option bonus up to 5 years. You could spread it across the total of whatever you write that check for up to 5 years. There's no void years on the back end. So I would assume, let's say, just for round number's sake, he's due 19.6. Let's say this year they give him a $10 million option bonus. I would assume that they would take a full 5-year window and they would say $10 million divided by 5. That's $2 million this year, $2 million next year, $2 million in 2026, $2 million in 2027, and $2 million in 2028, even though he's still only under contract to play for the team through 2026. Which would mean his salary cap hit, even though he got $10 million in cash, his salary cap hit only went up $2 million. But of course, that's assuming that they leave the base salary as it is and they just write him a new check for whatever the difference is. I kind of want to leave his salary cap hit fairly high. The Dolphins, they don't need, they've got, over the cap has been about $22.7 million in cap space, and they may get more money back from Shaq Barrett. So that's where I really have a hard time. It's you guys still have Tyreek Hill on the books for $31.3 million this year. He's your biggest cap hit by twice X the next highest number. Do you really need to open up the space? And this is where you get into the economics of the league a little bit. There is an argument from some of the more progressive teams across the league, and this includes Philadelphia and what their cash to cap spending is, and Cleveland and what their cash to cap spending is. They borrow at an extreme rate against future years of salary cap because there's no interest in debt. And with the explosion of the salary cap, it went up $30 million. It was 22.4 to 255.5. So it goes up $30 million. So if you spend the dollar today, but you have to pay the bill tomorrow, and a dollar has a value that's 10% higher tomorrow, then you're borrowing the money from the future when the dollar will get you further than what it will today. And that's where I would not be surprised if they said, we're going to maximize as much salary cap space as we can. And whatever we don't use, we can roll over into future years to help already cover the difference. And then there's an increase in the cap that diminishes what the percent of cap of his commitment is going to look like versus what it is today. So there's going to be, I think, that's the primary decision that the team had to make once they decided we're going to take $21 million and move it up from 2026 into 2025 and 2024 to compensate Tyreek Hill and give all of it to him guaranteed. If I had to guess, I don't think they would max restructure him. And the reason why I think that is I look at Bradley Chubb. The team restructured Bradley Chubb's contract this offseason to create more cap space for the team. But they didn't do a max restructure. They took salary from what he was owed, and they converted it to a bonus and spread it out across years, just like every team does to create more salary cap space. But they left $5 million more than what they could have taken from his salary to soften how much gets prorated out into future years. They said, we could write you a full check for everything you're owed except for the vet minimum. But we're going to leave $6 million of your salary in this year and voluntarily leave a bigger salary cap hit than what we could leave to ensure we have a little bit more flexibility. We don't feel like we need the whole thing to operate through our plan this offseason. The Dolphins don't need any salary cap space at this point. They don't need any of it. It's the ideal of, do you want to put it on the card knowing that there's no interest and the value of the dollar tomorrow is higher, and play that game of, well, just the natural inflation of the salary cap and the value of the dollar, there's better returns on spending it now, but paying it later. We'll see. I'm sure as soon as I hit publish here, the terms will drop. But if we do, we'll react to it because that's what we do here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. As always, I am Kyle Krabs. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Go Dolphins. I'll talk to you again soon.